This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, it is clear.
Okay, so thanks for that. So yesterday we discussed about something brief about what is AWS services and how we replace a normal architecture which that we can spin up in a normal on-premise to cloud. So today we'll look into some of the concepts of cloud, like we look into what is cloud, why it is necessary that we need to move our business to the cloud. This will give you insights of like why you need to move to the cloud or what is an advantages if you move to the cloud, all sort of things, like you'll able to understand like what exactly the cloud is offering and why we need to move there and what is an advantage that we get moving to the cloud. So something like advantages, and mainly advantages, there is no disadvantage actually. So maybe only about the data privacy we can think of a disadvantage. Further also we do have a solutions, how do we maintain those things. And we look into creating AWS account, okay, where you should be able to create a free tier AWS account. I'll tell you how do you do that. And after that, we'll also look into creating some users. Like for example, many people try to access the AWS account, right? In an organization, there would be developers, QA guys, or anyone from your company should be able to access an AWS account. So how do you manage those users? Like what is a user management you can think of, and how do you divide them into different groups? So you can think like all developers coming into one group in your project, like and all QA guys coming into another group in your project, or you can define any kind of groups and you can start adding to that. So we'll try to start with this and go within like majorly you need to understand the advantages, what gives you when you move to the cloud, because even in the exam perspective of any writing any examination, this is very important. Like why do you want to move to the cloud? Okay, let's try to see some slides firstly. So I'll go through some of the slides which will tell you what exactly cloud offers you, why you need to move to the cloud, and all these kind of things. Later we'll come and create a free account and we'll start with the users and all that. So maybe many of you already know these kind of things, like how the website works and what is a server and all that. Maybe some of you guys are very new to like the concepts of server and all that. But we'll try to understand cloud from many perspectives, like what kind of infrastructure that it gives, what kind of services that it gives and all that. So you need to spare with me for some time, even though it is very basic for you, so that slowly we'll move on to the complex ones. So now if you see normally how the website works, like you have a client, which could be your mobile or a Firefox browser or anything that you connect to a server via internet. So this is how a normal website generally works. You'll have a client IP address and a server will have an IP address. Generally, via that, the network is connected to both the missions, and that is how you get an internet and websites that you can open and browse them. So what is a server compromises of? So generally, whenever we talk about a server, like it could be a virtual machine or anything that has a CPU, a RAM. A CPU is the main, like which makes all the processings and everything, where you run the programs and anything which goes into the basically it goes into the mission programming and where it runs some executions, whatever that you want, and which gives an output. And RAM is a memory, which is an actual memory where the things actually run. So this is a processing power, and this is a memory where actually the programs runs and everything, even the operating system also runs on RAM. So this consists of a kind of brain, how exactly a server runs. So for example, if you are trying to create a VM, you need to specify how much amount of CPU that you need, how much amount of RAM that you need. Some programs could be memory intensive, some applications could be compute intensive, that kind of things. So it all depends upon when you try to create a virtual machine, you will figure out why you need to go with the more CPU, more RAM, or like what is the capacity that you need for running your application. So those kind of things that you regularly encounter. So you need to know that it requires a CPU and RAM and all these things. And it also needs a storage. You can think of a typical laptop or a normal computer that you need a processor, RAM, and a storage. Like the storage could be a normal block storage, like which could be like generally when you create a VM, you also need a storage to run your operating system and all that. And also a database, for example, if you want to store any data in a structured way. So this is something generally a server will have. Like if you take a MySQL server, which is a SQL server which is running, which needs all these components that you see here. Or even if it is a normal website that you run on any web server, you need these things in order to combine these things and run the things. Now, to connect all these things, you need routers and switches and a DNS server so that you will have a domain name, something like whatever the domain name that you have, it will be running with all these things, which is what a server compromises of. Like even if I create a VM in any cloud, I need to specify RAM, I need to specify CPU, data, and all these things you can think it of. So generally before the cloud, and also all the networking cables that you need to connect them so that you can get your website, the client, this is a server, and it tries to connect that and try to get the website and all that. So traditionally how the infrastructure is built, like let's see. After that we can see what kind of advantages that the cloud will be giving. So generally, as I told you yesterday, like many companies start everything from a home or garage or a normal data center in a office, in a room in the office, where they procure the servers, where they try to install the operating system on the server, and where they try to run their application. So you can't generally, if you previously before the cloud, if you want to start any business, this is how you used to do. But these days, there is a cloud, and you have all the infrastructure in the cloud. Whatever the requirement that you have, you can just create them in the AWS cloud or Azure, or you can start using them. So before that, you need to purchase the servers. You need to run your application. Maybe let's suppose you start with a simple chat application, like something like WhatsApp started. They would be starting in the home or garage. After that, they'll be building their the kind of compute power is not sufficient, like just running in a garage or a home. You need to move it to a office or a data center where you have the larger space where you can run more servers, so that more and more users can start using your application. So this is how the business will be growing. But if you go to a traditional IT approach, these are the kind of problems that you get. Firstly, you need to pay the rent of the data center, okay, where you put the servers and all that, and you need to procure them. You need to literally purchase the what kind of server that you need to have, how much racks that you need to have, how much CPU, RAM, all the things that we have discussed that a normal server should have. All these things you need to take care of it. And also the power supply, cooling, and maintenance. This is one of the important thing, because all these things should be there in order for the servers to run and your application to be up and running. Because once you are in the business, you should always ensure that by any cost your applications or the anything that you want, you are in the business, should be running, so that it will generate the revenue for you and you can grow up in the market. And you also need to replace some of the hardware also. Let's suppose people start, like WhatsApp started with a limited of 1 TB space in the servers. Slowly it grows, right? You need to increase more and more, like 2 TB and 3 TB, and the hardware should be replaced. And also you need to replace the processors also with a better processing power, so that your application is fast and it handles many things a lot and lot. And it also increases, like there are many components that gets increased in the business, and they need to replace the hardware to accommodate those things. And scaling is very limited. So as we have seen many applications these days, like if you look into I took an example of big billion days in the Amazon or Flipkart. They try to come up with some kind of discount offer in race, and they see that a lot of people try to access their website during those times, or during the festivals when there is large discounts, people try to access that. So in a traditional IT model where you have the things in the data center, scaling is very, very limited. If you want to even increase the RAM, you need to turn your application down. There is a downtime associated to that. And there are a lot of challenges again to bring up the application. There could be problems like application could not come up once the scaling is done. These kind of problems also will be there. So you need to handle all of them. You need to hire people for doing that. You need to monitor the infrastructure regularly. The team should monitor. They need to take the decisions based on alerting and all those things. And if there is a disaster where the, like for example, if you have a data center in a particular place, and if there is a disaster, if there is an earthquake or the power shutdown, then your complete application goes down. So your business goes down, the revenue goes down. And these days, like if you see even 10 minutes, if the website is down or if the e-commerce website is down, it would be a major loss. The people who have added the things into the cart, the people who went into the billing, or someone who is browsing and adding the things, all these things are very much matter for a reputation of a company and all that. So with the traditional approach, these are the major problems that we have. So these are something cloud solves them very easily. that you can directly go to the cloud and start your business on the cloud. That is what the cloud exactly gives us. So now, if you see what is a cloud computing generally, it's a kind of on-demand delivery of the compute power, database storage, applications, and any other IT resources. So when you think of a compute power, for example, if you want to run something, you need like CPU and RAM. That is what we have discussed about the compute, right? A server will be having those things. So you can just go to the AWS console. You can create a server for that with a quite amount of it's an on-demand. For example, if you're starting your application today, maybe the users will be only 10 or 20 who will be accessing that. Okay, your business is like that. Then you will go with a minimum compute power. Like you will take 2 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM. So suddenly tomorrow your growth will be increasing exponentially. Like more and people will be trying to access the website, so that you need to have the more compute power. So it's an on demand. You can just increase with a single click. You'll have more compute power, more RAM, so that you can use those things. That's the kind of advantage that this cloud gives you. And next about the database storage also. So if the like you start the very minimal database, like 20 GB or something, slowly your application grows and you need more and more database. And this can be automatically done. Like AWS itself take care of all the things. It will take off it will take care of the backups of the database. It will take care of doing the maintenance against the database. All these things also we can leverage on the AWS to handle all those stuff. So literally you can think of your business, your application, your code. You need not think of many other things like what kind of VMs that you need to provision, or what kind of how if business grows, whether my infrastructure supports it or not. Like these kind of things, you need not think of it. So you pay as you go pricing. Like if you increase now, if you increase the compute power now, you pay for that. For example, if your business is not going well, you want to change into another platform, you completely want to remove that, you just shut down the servers, you don't pay for that. So this kind of model, it has grown. Like you can think of general analogy of how the power bill generates in a household. So if you start using any appliances, the power gets increased. If you shut down the appliances, there is no consumption of it, right? So on the same lines, if you increase any kind of infrastructure, you'll pay for that. If you remove that, you don't pay for anything like that. So that is a kind of advantage the cloud gives you. And you can also provision exactly the right type and size of the computing. So if you're just starting the business, you just need 2 CPU and 4 gigs of RAM. You can just provision the resources based on that. You need not over provision or under provision. You can exactly provision the things that you want, and you can go to you can run any website on that or anything that you can do. And you can access many more resources instantly. For example, if you're growing, if you're expanding your business, let's suppose you want to send the email notification to everyone saying that if new products came into the like in your website, then you need an email notification, right? So in the cloud, there is a service which does an email notification. So with a single click, within 15 minutes, you can manage that, and all the users who are having the subscriptions to your website will be having all the notification instantly. Or if you want to build a chat bot where you need to support in your website giving the chat, all these kind of things you can easily build in the AWS cloud. It gives you all the kind of resources already built in that. Whether it is a machine learning, whether it is a data scientist or anything, you have the services that are associated in the AWS for those things. And there is a simple way to access the server, storage, a database, and everything. Even with a very limited knowledge of an IT, if for example, if I don't know anything about database, but I want to create a database and I want to provision it to my application. So with the very limited knowledge of the database, I can just go to a normal graphical user interface, like a web, like what you see in a web console. You go there, you create the database is provisioned for you. Then your application can start using it. So in a similar simple ways, you can increase the space, you can create the servers. All these kind of things give like in a fingertips itself in the cloud. So previously this was very, very hard if you go to a traditional approaches in IT. So generally all these things will be maintained by the AWS itself. So then how the network is connected between different kind of services, how they talk to each other, all these things are maintained by the AWS, and they'll just give you a web application kind of thing where you can create many things, and where you can start doing the things. So now from the on-premise, the things are moved to the office. Now from the office, you move all the workloads to the cloud. So generally, like all the companies these days are starting their business on the cloud. If they're having any on-premise applications, any kind of applications are being moved to the cloud with all these kind of advantages and all this. So if you see, there are many services that are already currently using the cloud services. These are the very famous ones. Like Netflix is completely leveraged on AWS. Like all the streaming things, everything, the Netflix is completely built on microservices and which runs on the AWS cloud itself. So next, like there are different kind of deployment models in the cloud itself. So there is something called private cloud, where you need to, the cloud services is like used by a single organization. Like it is not a kind of public, like it is completely internal. You will have the complete control in creating anything like databases or anything. So like it is used for specific business needs where you have very sensitive data. Let's suppose a kind of Aadhaar card, like you are trying to store the Aadhaar card information, all the kind of private information of the citizens and all that, then it's always better to use a kind of a private cloud. So where you have the data center, you install a cloud in the data center itself. So the Rackspace is one of the example to have a completely a private cloud. And next you will have a model like a public cloud. So whatever that you see, Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, these are all the public clouds. Because once I put the information in the public cloud, generally they'll tell it's completely secure and all that, but again, if you finally look that you are not maintaining the infrastructure, right? It is sitting somewhere in the data center which is owned by the AWS guys. So you can think of the, since the infrastructure is owned by the AWS guys, it's a kind of public cloud itself. It's not a private cloud where you have complete control of control over the cloud, and all those things will not be there in the public cloud. Or you can build something called hybrid cloud. So this kind of model, what you can do is you'll have something called a data center, where all the sensitive data center you'll put in the data center, like which is completely owned by you. You will handle the things. You will literally go to the data center and you will spin up the servers or DB storage or everything based on that. And you'll also use the AWS public cloud. So AWS public cloud, it will run all your application. Whenever it needs some kind of sensitive information or data, it connects to the data center, the private data center, and will try to take it up. So this is a kind of hybrid cloud model where you extend some capabilities to the public cloud, and where you put the data center, like data and everything in a storage medium in a normal data center. So you'll have the three kind of deployment models in the cloud, like private, public, and hybrid. So in this course, we'll only look into the public cloud. We'll only go into the AWS and see all the services what AWS offers us. And next, these are the main characteristics of the cloud computing. So even in the certification examination, they'll try to always look into these kind of things. So they will give you a question saying that why I need to move to the cloud, what is an advantage that it gives you, and they'll try to give an options based on the kind of all the things that you see on this slide. So firstly, it's an on-demand self-service. So users will just go and provision the services which without much interaction, like creating all the like for example, if you want to have a database, you just go there and create a database and it will provision for you. You need not think of where the database is running and all those kind of things. And even the broad network access will be there. For example, the AWS is connected globally. Like you will have many data centers in all the places. Even in India, we have in the Mumbai, and they're building in the Hyderabad also. And for example, even in the Singapore, it is there in the Asia. If you take the Asia region, in the same way you have the US region and all that. And all these kind of data centers are highly connected between them, and that will be very fast the application, even if it is running on any of the places. And it's a multi-tenancy and resource pooling also will be there. For example, multiple customers can share the same kind of infrastructure and applications with security and privacy. And multiple customers are again serviced by the same kind of physical resources. Let's suppose if you create a virtual mission, even someone's virtual mission also may exist on the same hardware. That kind of things also will be possible in a public cloud. And you have elasticity and scalability. For example, you can just grow the business as it is required. Like if you are going for any a kind of big billion days, as we have discussed, you can just with a single click you can expand your infrastructure so that you can cater any number of users who are trying to access your website. And a measured service, the usage is measured by users pay exactly what they want. For example, you don't over provision or under provision, you exactly provision the things, and based on that the billing will be generated. If it can be like you have the Linux instances, the virtual machines, which will be running per second billing also will be there, or per minute billing also will be there. So if you use only for 10 minutes, only 10 minutes billing will be generated. And based on that, you can just pay for that. So these kind of things are there in the cloud. And now you can think of it's a completely on demand, like you don't own any hardware. That's the reason the complete total cost of ownership and the operational expense generally will be very less for that. And it is like you'll also benefit from the massive economics of, like, economies of scale, they call it as, because AWS is very huge, very global. So when they're building so much, generally the price come down, like the price will come down, and you can get the basic services with very reduced offering, because many people are using AWS cloud. That's the reason when a lot of people are using certain things, generally the price comes down, like there are many infrastructures and better ways they'll bring up their services. And instead of, like, you'll also stop guessing the capacity, and you'll actually measure all these things. I'll tell you about all these things, how you can look into the billing reports and all these things in the coming classes. And with this, the speed and agility gets increased. You can fastly start your business and build on the cloud, and you can stop spending the money and running the data centers and all that. You need not manage all these things. Literally, if you build a site, and if you want to global, you can just go the global in the minutes itself. For example, if you create a, let's suppose you created a website which is there in the English language. Now you got some users who are from the German or France, who are watching your website, and you want to convert your complete website into their languages. So you can just do these things in minutes, because there are data centers, edge locations. We'll talk about all these things later, but the whole point is you can go into the global within the minutes itself. So all those kind of things will be easily possible with AWS, and there are services for that. And now, what are the problems that is solved by the cloud? Like I told you, we have the advantages and disadvantages, right? Only the disadvantages, like as I told you, that if there is a sensitive data, you can't completely rely on AWS giving the complete sensitive data. Then you can build a kind of hybrid model where you have the data stored in the data center, some kind of storage medium, and where you have the public cloud, which will be accessing the data and which will just process the data whenever it is needed. So now you have the flexibility. You can change the data, like resource type. For example, now you went with a virtual machine with 2 CPUs and 4 GB of RAM. Suddenly your business increased and you want to increase it to the 4 CPUs and 8 GB of the RAM. So within minutes we can do that. And it's a completely cost effectiveness. As I told you, you use something, you pay for that. If you don't use, you don't literally pay for any of these things. And scalability, we'll look into these scalability options into the deeper, like how do you increase, like as I told you yesterday, you can write some policies. For example, if your CPU is 50%, then you can add like 70% or something, then you can add more servers. So if the user count is, for example, in the first hour, people like 50,000 users accessed my website, suddenly it has increased to 1 lakh, then I can just automatically create more and more infrastructure in the background so that it can like all the users can easily access my application. And it's an scalability. You can scale out and scale in, like you can reduce the infrastructure when no one is using, and when people are using, you can just increase it as required. Like for example, if you take a Book My Show, which is an application, normally we don't use Book My Show in a normal regular days. They can just run on a simple 2 or 3 servers, you can think of like this. But on the weekends, people try to book more and more tickets, and people try to go for the movies, right? And movies and events. Then on the weekends, they can tell that from the Friday morning to the Sunday evening or something, or a Monday evening, I need more and more servers to cater my users and all that. I can write some kind of policies and all these things like that. So that kind of advantage the cloud gives you. We'll look into that more detailed in the coming sections. And high availability and the fault tolerance. So this is very important. As I told you, in a very traditional thing, if there's a earthquake or a disaster or a fire damage to the data center, all your servers goes down and your application is completely like no one will be able to use it. But in the AWS, it's a kind of highly available. For example, your application you can run in 3 data centers. Like one would be in one region and another would be in a different region. So if one region goes down, still your application will be there in running in different region, right? So this kind of high available thing will be there in the AWS. So one thing every time you need to think, like whenever you try to you go to the interview, or when you try to tell someone what is an advantage of the cloud, even in your own companies also, the major things they'll be looking is highly available. Like you need to have your application always up and running. And one more thing is elasticity. Like you should have an ability to scale out and scale in based on the requirements and all that. And also agility, where you can develop very fastly and you can test and run your software applications very much fastly. Like these days we have the agile model in place instead of the regular models. You need to have a very basic MVP very fastly, so that all the stakeholders and the customers or the anyone can look into that, and they can come out saying that they can give you a rapid feedback, and that kind of feedback mechanism you can use, and you can again do a different kind of changes to the application. So to have these things very rapidly and fastly, you can completely leverage upon the AWS to use those kind of services what they give. So this is the kind of problems AWS solves. So now till now what we have discussed is like what are the problems with an on-premise, and what is a cloud on-prem setup, and what advantages, like what is the benefits of using the cloud, right? So these are the things that we have discussed. And any doubt in this, like do you feel any difference of opinion on this, or do you have any particular doubt in this, like anything more that you think the cloud is providing or not providing? Is it fine? Okay, I take that as is. If you have any doubts, you can just stop me, or if you think that I'm a little bit faster while talking or moving the slides, and if you want to understand one particular point, you can just ask me. I can give you more examples, and we can talk in a kind of real-time fashion to understand that particular concept in effective way. Okay, this is
Yeah, hi. This
yeah,
is Rick. I have one question. Like,
yeah, sure, please go
what
on.
is the difference between like on-premise like infrastructure or server setup and private cloud?
So generally, on-premise infrastructure and private cloud is like, for example, in the on-premise infrastructure, generally you'll purchase a kind of server, and where you have an operating system and do all these things. But when you think of installing a private cloud on the on-premise setup, so it will, you can think of another layer, like with like the cloud is like, for example, if you install a Rackspace or OpenStack is one of the example. Like let me just show you that. So there is one example called OpenStack. So what it gives you is like, it's a kind of completely a kind of private cloud. So if you install this on premise, then you can convert all the infrastructure into a cloud. So this will manage for you. For example, if you want to create a virtual machine, you'll just open an interface of OpenStack, and you'll just go there and click in creating the virtual machine. Or if you want to create anything like uh, a storage or a database, anything, it will give you a kind of interface. But you need to install all this one. You need to go to the data center. You need to ensure that OpenStack is properly installed, and you need to manage a lot of things even in the OpenStack. But this is also very popular. Like, yeah, you can use OpenStack in creating the virtual machines and all that. But again, there are a lot of things you need to maintain the OpenStack. Like, it's not someone from the AWS who will maintain the all the behind the scenes, like infrastructure or networking and all those things. You need to have all those things, and you need to maintain those things. But it is also a kind of interface that you get like AWS, like where you can create many of the resources from the just an browser itself.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, okay, that is about the models and benefits of the cloud, and we have the three kind of like the clouds, like private cloud and public cloud and all these things. Next, let's see a kind of types of cloud computing. So the next topic will be, what are the types of cloud computing that we have. So now we are like at least we are good, like we know what is cloud, what kind of benefits that the cloud is giving. Now there are different kind of cloud computing, like there are different types of cloud computing. Let's try to understand them. Firstly, there is something called infrastructure as a service. So we call it as IaaS. So this is an very famous infrastructure, like very famous terminology of having these days we are seeing like code as an IaaS, or like something like that, IaaS and code, something like that. So In the infrastructure as a service, it is nothing but a normal building block of the IT. For example, if you want to create a simple server, then you need to create a VM with CPU and RAM and all those things, right? That is a infrastructure as a service. So AWS provides you infrastructure as a cloud, infrastructure as a service, where you go there and where you create some kind of VMs, which are a kind of servers. So that is called infrastructure as a service. It's a very basic building blocks of the cloud, and it provides you the networking, a computers, a database storage, and all these things. And it has a highest level of flexibility where you can change the CPU and all those things. And I'll tell you the different things, then you can understand. Next, you have something called platform as a service. So where it removes the organization to manage the underlying infrastructure. For example, if you need a VM, it comes into the infrastructure service. If you need a DB, so let's suppose you just need a database, nothing, not more anything like that, then you need to go to the AWS console. You create a database. So that is a kind of platform as a service. You need not think of underlying operating system, like where the DB is running. For example, if you want a MySQL, so you just go to the AWS console, you create a MySQL for your use case or for your application. You need not think of what is an operating system it is hosted, whether it is hosted on Linux operating system, Red Hat, what kind of operating system it is having, and where it is hosted, whether it is running on a virtual machine, what kind of virtual machine it is. All these things you need not have all this kind of knowledge on that. You just go to the platform as a service, you create a database, and you can start using it for your application. So let's suppose another example. Now you need something called like you need an Elasticsearch, right? For your application, you want to have something called Elasticsearch, which will make all the indexing and all these things very, very faster. Now I'll just go to the AWS console. I'll go to service which provides me the Elasticsearch. I'll just click on that. I'll create the Elasticsearch, a cluster of Elasticsearch, and I'll just give an endpoint to the application so that applications will start using it. So I need not care about how the Elasticsearch is running, where it is running, and all these kind of things. So this one you can think of a platform as a service. So firstly, infrastructure as a service, the server itself. You go there, you create a network or you create a computer, something like virtual machine, that is called infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service is nothing but you need some kind of service, you create that, you start using it. And finally, you have something called software as a service. So software as a service is very more encapsulated than all these things. Let's suppose you want to use email. Now you just go to the Gmail, you create an account and you start sending the emails. That's it, right? You need not care about what is the backend of Gmail, how it is sending the emails, where it is running, what is the servers associated with that. All these things you need not care. Like you just go to the Gmail and you just start using it. Or let's suppose you want to have some kind of sharing thing. You just go to the Google Drive, you start sharing all the like whatever you want to share with your friends, you can start sharing it. You need not think of where it is stored and how it is stored and what is the CPU behind it, what is the RAM behind it. So everything is encapsulated. You directly come to software as a service, we call it as. So for example, if you are working in a company, then generally I can ask you like what is a product, whether it is a software as a service product or whether it is a platform as a service. Let's suppose Salesforce is there. Salesforce is a platform as a service where they give you a complete application where you can start doing many things on the Salesforce. Or you can think of a Pega systems or a SAP. All these things are a platform as a service. So what is the difference between what you manage on the on-premise and what is managed by others? Like I'll just go with this slide. This is fine. So generally, if you're on-premise, you need to maintain all these things. You need to maintain your applications, your data, your runtime, everything you need to maintain. From here to here, everything you need to maintain. If you're going to the cloud, if it is an infrastructure as a service, you only need to maintain operating system. For example, I'll tell the cloud, I need one virtual machine with Windows operating system. Okay. And I want to install .NET on that. So I'll just give these kind of details and I can start doing the things. And AWS will manage all the things for you. AWS will manage the, how do you connect that, like a kind of networking, like whether it is connected to the internet or all those things. And what is the storage associated to that, AWS will look into that. And the servers and virtualization, everything AWS will look into that. You only need to think of operating system, whether it is Windows or if you want to run the Tomcat or something, you need to think of something like this. If you come to the platform as a service, this is much more encapsulated. As I told you, you want a database that you want to associate to your application. You go to the cloud, you just tell, I need a database. You create the database and it's created for you. You just need to think of your application connecting to the database, and what kind of like username and password that your application wants to connect to the database and start using that and running the queries and all those things. You need to take care of it. And software as a service, you need not literally take care of anything. You directly look into using of the application like Gmail or a Google Drive, where you store the things and where you share with your friends. Or you can think of GoToMeeting. So I just started the meeting, I'm into the meeting and I'm just using the application. So GoToMeeting is a software as a service. So you need to understand the differences between these things, which is very important. Like when you're trying to build an application, you need to see like whether you are maintaining the infrastructure or whether you are giving a platform as a service to the stakeholders and the clients and all that. So how is your application is interacting with the underlying hardware and all those things. So these are all the famous models like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So so this is what the like different kind of cloud computing meant. So examples are here, like infrastructure as a service. I told you EC2, like a not EC2 is nothing but Elastic Cloud Compute. It is a normal VM in the AWS. So you go to the AWS if you want to have a server. The name of the server will be EC2, like we call it as Amazon EC2. And in the same way, you have all these other clouds also, which provides you the same kind of thing. And the platform as a service, you can think of RDS or Elastic Beanstalk. Maybe like you'll come to know with all these kind of terminologies later. But you just think of three kind of cloud computings, and the examples that I gave you about Gmail or a database and all these things that are also relevant to these ones. And a software as a service is like Gmail or like Zoom or GoToMeeting, all these kind of things. And okay, I'll just jump to the other things. We'll come to other slides later again, like when it is relevant. Now I'll directly go to AWS and I'll show you some kind of global infrastructure that AWS has and why AWS is very much popular. So actually AWS is like they have the data centers all over the world. Like if you see, there are many regions, we call it as. So whenever you come to this particular page, let me just share you this one. So later you can also access this and look into this. So AWS is very popular because it has a global infrastructure in place all over the world. For example, you have the different kind of regions. So region is nothing but it's a kind of in India we have a single region, that is Mumbai, where currently AWS data center is hosted. And in US, if you see, there are 4 to 5 regions, and Singapore is one of the region. And in the same way, Australia has few regions, and Africa has one region, and the Europe has 4 to 5. So totally 26 launched regions will be there. So you need to decide where you want your applications to be running. So this can be again, prices will be a little bit different in different regions. For example, that if you want to run a data center in Mumbai, it is very much costly because the real estate in Mumbai is very costly. And if AWS wants to purchase a land, and if they want to run a data center there, all those incurring will be there. The power is very costly in India if you compare to the other countries. That's the reason if you are launching any of your website in the Mumbai region, it will be generally bit overpriced than the other regions. How do you decide a region? So it all depends upon your use case. So let's suppose I'm running a Swiggy application. So which is completely, I cater only Hyderabad and or a different regions in India itself. So I'll always see that the people who are the users of the Swiggy application needs to get the website very, very fastly. They should be able to, without very less latency and hassle free, they need to use my app and everything. Then I need to see that the users will get it very, very much nearby, so that I'll see that in the AWS I have a Mumbai region. I'll go and start running all my servers in the Mumbai region so that the application is very close to the users. So in the same way, like if there is like if the audience is in the US, like or Europe has some kind of European Union policies. Like for example, Germany is very strict on that kind of data policies. They don't want to move the data out of the Europe region or their country region. Then you have a Frankfurt region in Germany where you can run your servers. So in this way, you can decide which region you want to run. So AWS has around 26 regions and all that. And there are 84 availability zones. So what is an availability zone? So if I go to this slide, like which I have the, okay, this is the region. So a total region is something like you can think of region as Hyderabad. Okay, AWS has a data centers in Hyderabad. They're already building that. Currently, it's not in running, but they're currently building that. So let's suppose Hyderabad is a region, and you will have availability zone. Availability zone is nothing but individual. Again, there are different availability zones. Like you can think, this region is, you can think of Uppal. This could be a Secunderabad. This could be an high-tech city. So let's suppose if there are floods in Secunderabad and the data center is flooded and there is a problem with the electricity, then only this particular zone will go down. That is Secunderabad zone. Still, your application will be running on the high-tech city and Uppal. And you have the high connectivity between these things, like the low latency and resilient fiber will be connected from the underground, like AWS does all these things for you. So let's suppose I'm running a Swiggy application. It will be running in the three zones now here. It will be running from this zone, and this zone. If this particular zone goes down, still my application is running because you have two zones in one particular region. So in this way, AWS has multiple regions, and in each region, they'll have 3 to 5 availability zones. Maybe in Hyderabad, you can have 5 availability zones or 3 availability zones, depending upon how much amount of users are using the workloads in this particular region. They'll build based on that. So that is what we call it as a global infrastructure or a cloud infrastructure. So now this is about the regions. This is about the availability zones. I'll quickly log in into the console and I'll show you how the regions will be there. CY3. I'll just tell you all these things. How do you log in? How do you create the account? All these things. I'll let you know. I'm just showing you the regions, how it will be there. So I'm just logged into AWS console. This is how the user interface looks like. Okay, now if you see the firstly, okay, this is database, like this is a service related to the database, because I have just, so let me just go to all services. Okay, just see that this is how the console looks like. We'll get into these things later. So now if you see, here is a region part. Now, as I told you, there are 26 regions, right? So now you can see that North Virginia, US East one, they'll call it as. In the US, for example, in the East, there are two regions. They'll call it as US East one. Another region is US East two. In the US West one, West two is this California and Oregon. So in this way, like you'll have the four regions here, and the Africa can have one region. And if you just come down to the Asia, so Asia has around 8 to 9 regions, and this is the region that I'm talking about, Mumbai. Let's suppose if you want to create a database in Mumbai, then what you do, you directly click on this one, then you will go to Mumbai region. My internet is a bit slow, I think so. Okay, you are now in the Mumbai region. So you now have switched into the different region, that is Mumbai. Now you can start creating the DB. Let's suppose you want to create some MySQL database. I'll just go to this interface. I'll just start telling that create a database, and I need to give few details like what all the things, different kind of details. We'll look into these individual services later. But this is how you create a particular a particular database in a particular region. So it will be just created in this particular Mumbai region. When you shift from the Mumbai region to again North Virginia or something, like you go to the US region, you won't see the same things. Again, you'll see a databases RDS console with a different databases. So like if you want to access a particular resource in that particular region, then you need to move to that region and try to see a service related to that particular region. So in this way, but you don't worry, generally these things are very easily managed. Like it's not very difficult that you generally switch over all these things. So if a company, they'll generally go with single region. Like for example, if my company, they'll just go with the US East one itself. We have all our workloads and all our clients and everything in single region itself. So whenever I log in, I'll directly this is a default region that it will directly choose for me, and all my workloads are here. Whenever, like for example, if there is an application which is more associated to India, and like something like Swiggy, as I told you, if they want to create in the Asia specific Mumbai region, then you need to log into the AWS console and you can make a default region as a Mumbai itself. So where you can directly look into your workloads and your servers and all these kind of things. Okay, this is how it looks like. And if you want to search any service, like once you are logged into this console, if you want to search any services, you can just search like this, or there are many ways that you can search it. I will come to those part later, and I'll go through the complete console later. So this is how the console home looks like. So here you'll have, this is a console home. This is a kind of dashboard which will give you all the details of the recently visited services or regularly that you the services that you use. Every service is associated to the different things. We'll go into one by one later. And how do you log into these things and how do you access different components on the dashboard? We'll look into that. But now I'm just showing you the global infrastructure itself. So it has different regions and different availability zone. And how do you look into availability zone? There is no way that from the console that you can go to that availability zone and see that. But generally, while creating any kind of, for example, I'm creating a server, then you will see that availability zone. So it will be like this. So for example, if the region is US East 1, okay, this could be North Virginia or something like this, then you will have availability zone something like this. So availability zone will be US East 1A, US East 1B, something like this. So this could be something like, this could be some kind of region. For example, if you think in a kind of, if the US is like, if it is an AP South one or something like, which is Hyderabad, then you can think of this is this could be one region like Secunderabad, this could be high tech city, and this could be something. So you can divide your workload on like, which will be running in different data centers. And if one data center goes down, your application will be always running in the other data center, and which will serve the users and all that. And how do you do that? How this high availability will be there? How does an application will be running in multiple availability zones, multiple data centers, and all these things? We'll look into that later. We have a concept called load balancers. I will create a website and I'll show you how it is being hit to the different data centers and all that later on. But this is the global infrastructure that we have. And next we have different things like the local zones, and I'll come to these parts later. And it is serving in these many countries now. And you also have something called edge locations also. We'll call it as like, these are the current regions that is there. Like if you see, these are the regions, and the ones are coming soon. Like if you click on the Hyderabad, it's coming soon. Currently you have the Mumbai, and there are 3 availability zones in the Mumbai. It is launched in the 2016. So if you go to any other region, for example, if you go to the North Virginia here, so it has around 6 regions. So there are around 6 availability zones, 1A, 1B, 1C, up till 1F it will be there. And you have one in South America, and all these things will be there. So you can just go into this map and see what all the availability zone it has. And it also has the edge locations, we call it as. I'll tell you about what is an edge computing and all these things later on, because this is one of the very important thing. Because, for example, if you are watching a movie, like if you're watching the YouTube in India, okay, they need to send ads based on the region. Like for example, you get Zomato ads or Swiggy ads or something if you're watching in Hyderabad. So these kind of things, how they'll do it is like, they'll have something called like CDN, we call it as cloud French distributions, and they have the edge locations, and based on that they'll see that the website is served from the nearby region, nearby edge location, and based on that they can generate the ads and they can generate the revenues and all those things. We'll look into that real-time examples and architectures later on, how what is an edge location and all that. So for now, you need to understand about the regions and availability zones, which are very important. Okay, next, coming to the account. So what AWS gives you is, AWS gives you a free tier kind of thing. Like you can create many of the services freely for a certain amount of hours and all that. I will, once I introduce a service to you, for example, I'm telling you a database service, then I'll tell you what all the free tier options that you have for the database that you can create and run, how much amount of space that you need to create, and what kind of database that you can create. For example, there could be a MongoDB, there could be a MySQL, PostgreSQL. So what is free in this? So all those things I'll tell you about that service. I'll tell you the free options. I will also create the same thing for you, and I'll show you so that you can do the same things in your home and or your accounts also. So firstly, to create AWS account, okay, like if you just go to, you can do something called console.aws.com, something like this, or like you can just Google. You can just tell AWS console, it will directly redirect you to the management console page. Okay, so let me just share this link with you. So tomorrow you should be able to create the account for the tomorrow's class, because tomorrow we'll go into virtual machines or EC2 instances and all these kind of things. Okay, so now this is the console firstly that you see. Now if you want to create an account, so maybe I can click on sign into the console. Okay, here you have something called create a new AWS account. So you need to click this. So here you just need to provide email address and the password and the account name that you want to have. Let's suppose if I'm trying to create, I don't have any temporary email or something like that. Okay, I do have already account, right? So but you need to, in your case, you need to give the email address, the working email address, and some kind of password. And once you give, any account name could be there. So once you go with this particular step, next you will be directed to something called the like it will take you to the certain details of your address and all that. Later you need to give the any credit card information. So generally, even though you give the credit card information, it is not that they deduce some cost in that or not, that like it's completely, you just give the credit card information and the account will be created. Unless and until you create something, the billing won't be generated. For example, if you just go to the console and create some kind of service, only then based on that the billing will be generated. Generally it won't generate anything once you create an account. So there is nothing like a premium account, something like we see in the Netflix, like multiple kind of accounts and all that. That is there. Generally for the companies, they'll give you a business accounts and a corporate accounts and all those kind of things. But for a normal people, you just need to give your email address and the password and all these things. You need to give a credit card or a debit card information. Don't worry that they don't deduce any charges or anything won't be there. You just need to give all those working credit or debit cards, and once that is there, an account will be created. So once an account is created, you will have an email, the address that you have used in creating the account and the password that you have given here, that is used to sign into the console. Okay, let's suppose you have created that. So like once you have created that, then you need to, like, you will come to the screen where you have clicked on the login, and you will come here. There are two kind of options here. One is a root user, one is an IAM user. So I'll tell you what is the difference between the root user and IAM user, when I'm talking about the user management and groups and all that, right? So as today it's already time has passed, I can't give you more details, like we just have 1 hour class. So now in the root user, you just need to give the email address that you have chosen. For example, mine is like sandeep.devops, this one. So I just need to click on that, and maybe they'll ask you with this captcha. This is very common for the security purpose. Okay, once you have done with this, you need to provide the password that you have created with, and this kind of option will not be there for you. This is something I have used multi-factor authentication to make this more secure, but I'll tell you these things later. This option won't be there for you. It will directly redirect uh, to the AWS console dashboard itself, so you'll not get anything. So you just need to create the account. Just try to access the console, but don't create anything. You just come here, and once after you have done creating the account, tomorrow we'll go into the first service that we'll discuss, that is users, like how to create the users and different kind of users, how do you manage the users and all that. Later we'll go to the VM part, DB part, everything one by one. Okay, any doubts still here? Anything that you're unable to understand, or any doubts?
I think it is fine, Sandeep.
Here, so try to create an account, and if you get any problem, for example, maybe I have seen these kind of problems in my regular classes. People try to create the account, they get a problem with the bank itself generally. So if your credit cards are not internationally accepted, for example, uh, if you use an ICICI credit card, you literally need to go to the mobile app, and you need to choose the credit card, and you need to tell that this should be applicable for the international transaction, something like that. You need to ensure that if you're not having that kind of thing, just call your bank officer, and you just need to tell them that you want this credit card for international transactions. They will enable for you, and once you have gave those details in the credit card, then that's fine. They don't charge anything. It's a very you just need to give those account details, because like generally that is how the things will be there as you pay on go, as I told you, right? Once you give those details, and it will be generating a monthly bill where you need to click on something and pay. But as I told you, this course won't have, like, it's a completely free, like all we'll go only on the free tier and all those kind of terms. So Like if you just see this, I'll show you AWS free tier. So there are, every service has a kind of free tier in the AWS. For example, EC2 is a basic service, which is nothing but creating a virtual machine. So they'll tell you can run an EC2 750 hours per month. So if you see this, uh, the like till 750 hours, like you can just calculate. For example, if you're running 24 hours, if you're running the server, okay, it would be like if you're running for 31 days, then you'll see that only 744 hours will be consuming. So literally you can run one particular service for complete 1 month. So you go there, you create an EC2 and you can just leave it running itself for completely 1 month and it won't generate any bill for you. But you need to remember that there are certain things, how do you, like you can't just create any kind of virtual machine. For example, you can't choose 10 CPUs and 50 gigs of RAM. This kind of things won't be there. There will be very limited, like they'll give you 2 CPUs and 2 gigs of RAM, or 1 CPU, 2 gigs of RAM. I'll tell you while creating them. While I'm telling this particular service, I'll show you how do you create, what are the options that you need to choose for the free tier, so that you won't get any billing based on that. So in the same way, for example, if I'm trying to create a DB, again the same thing. So you can create all these kind of DBs. Again, there would be a kind of DB instance also, which will tell you need to create the 2 CPUs or 2 RAMs, and that you can run for 70 hours. It means that you just create that particular service, and even though you don't stop it also, for complete month, if it is even running, then they won't incur any charges. For example, if you create 2 EC2 instances, let's suppose you created 2 virtual machines, then the problem is there. It will be divided among that. But AWS gives you something called, if you create a virtual machine and if you turn that off, for example, if you stop it, then they don't charge you. Only the running services or the running instances will generate the bill for you. Like as I told you, it's a kind of power bill. If you turn on an appliance, then it will charge. If you turn off, if it won't generate any power bill, right? In the same way, AWS also will charge you. So we'll discuss about billing and all these things, and how do you, for example, if you accidentally create an account and if you didn't turn off, and if you don't know, like if you forgot to turn off also, I'll show you how it will create the reminders. For example, I can create a kind of billing reminder. I can tell if 100 rupees is crossed, just send an email or send some notification so that I'll be notified that a bill has been generated 100 rupees for this month, and so that I can go, I can see what which particular service has created that 100 rupees billing, and I can just turn that off, or I can do any kind of action based on the requirement. Okay, all these things will look into the very slowly, but this is what I want to end today. Tomorrow I'll go with creating, like once you create an AWS account, we'll go with creating the users. I'll give you a simple exercise in creating a different users and a different groups, and how do you add the users to the groups, and how do you control the permissions to the different users and all that. As I told you, developer just can't go there and create some kind of machine learning algorithms, because it will incur heavy charges into the account. So we need to restrict, like generally the companies, if you just if you just joined a company, then there will be a team called sysops or the DevOps, who will be giving an AWS account to you. They'll be adding into certain groups. You'll only get access to certain resources in the AWS. How do you do that? All those things we'll look into tomorrow. So any doubts or anything that you want to know, like any feedback, like if I'm going a bit fast, you can ask me, or anything is fine.
I think this phase is okay.
Okay. And one more thing I just want to know from you guys is like, just let's have a normal discussion like tomorrow, like what's your background, and whether you are from a development or a QA, or what's your background, because based on that also we can make this course more approachable for you. Like if you're already knowing certain things, and if I'm emphasizing more on certain things, it would be a boring kind of thing. So I want to see that this will be like who are all attending this course, everyone will have a good amount of knowledge having this particular classes and all that. So it would be better if you could tell me like what's your background. Even now it is fine if you're okay. So I'll stop the screen and let me stop the recording.